Hey guys, tonight we are hiding the world with scent. The rain is washing the muddy streets, but inside this room, it smells like a summer garden. We are stepping into the medieval perfumer's workshop. We are going to distill the essence of flowers and bottle the memory of the sun. This is a story about chemistry, beauty, and the art of the nose. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Now, breathe in the rose and lavender, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The rain comes down in sheets tonight. It beats against the narrow windows of the workshop with a rhythm that feels almost angry. Outside, the medieval city is drowning in late autumn darkness. The cobblestones are slick with water. The gutters overflow. The cold seeps into everything, wrapping itself around the wooden buildings, creeping under doors, sliding through cracks in the plaster. It is the kind of cold that makes your bones ache. The kind of cold that reminds you winter is coming. And winter in this time, in this place, is not a season to take lightly. But here, inside this room, the world is different. Step across the threshold and everything changes. The moment you enter, warmth embraces you, not the harsh heat of a roaring fire, but something gentler, something that unfolds slowly like petals opening in morning light. The air itself feels different on your skin, softer, richer, and then you notice it, the scent. It hits you all at once, and yet somehow gradually, like a wave that's been building far out at sea and finally breaks upon the shore. Summer, that's what you smell. Pure, impossible summer in the middle of this freezing, rain-soaked night. Your mind struggles to reconcile what your nose is telling you with what your eyes can see through those rain-streaked windows. But the scent doesn't lie. Roses, lavender, something warm and resinous underneath, like sunshine trapped in amber. The workshop smells like a garden in full bloom, like a field of wildflowers at noon, like every beautiful day you've ever forgotten, all rushing back to you at once. This is where the perfumer works. This is where he transforms the world. The room is not large, perhaps 12 feet by 15. The ceiling is low, crossed with dark wooden beams that have aged to the color of strong tea. The walls are thick stone, whitewashed once but now stained with the patina of years and work. There are shelves everywhere. They line every wall, rising from floor to ceiling, and they are crowded with bottles. Glass bottles of every shape and size, some clear, some colored amber or green or deep blue. Clay vessels with wax-sealed stoppers. Wooden boxes with mysterious contents. Fabric pouches that hang like sleeping bats from iron hooks. In the center of the room stands a large wooden table, scarred and stained from decades of use. Its surface is a map of experiments and accidents, burns and spills, the accumulated history of 1,000 transformations. This is the perfumer's altar. This is where the magic happens. And tonight, it is covered with new arrivals. The crates came this afternoon, 3 of them. Large wooden boxes bound with iron straps, their sides still dark with rain. The delivery man had struggled to get them through the narrow doorway, cursing under his breath, his clothes soaked through. He dropped them with relief on the workshop floor, accepted his payment, and fled back out into the weather. The perfumer had smiled. He knew what was inside. He'd been waiting for weeks. Now, with the rain still drumming its endless rhythm overhead, he stands before the crates and begins to open them. The first one resists. The wood has swollen slightly from the moisture. He works a thin iron bar under the lid, feeling for the nails, and then applies steady pressure. The wood groans. The nails shriek their protest. And then, with a sudden crack that echoes in the warm room, the lid comes free. And there, packed in dry straw, are the roses. Not fresh roses. Not the blooms you might find in a garden this morning, their petals still heavy with dew. These are dried roses, preserved at the peak of their perfection, and then carefully desiccated to lock in their essence. They came from the south, from the great gardens of the Mediterranean, where the damask rose grows in abundance, where the summers are long and hot, and the flowers develop a scent so rich, so complex, it's worth its weight in silver. He reaches into the crate and pulls out a handful. They feel like paper in his palm, impassably light, delicate. The petals are the color of old blood, a deep crimson that has darkened with the drying process. Some are still partially folded, frozen in the moment they were picked. Others have opened fully, their centers visible, their stamens long since removed. He brings them close to his face and inhales deeply. Even dried, even after weeks of travel packed in straw and shipped across mountains and rivers, they still smell like heaven. The scent is concentrated now, more intense than any fresh rose could ever be. It's sweet, yes, but also complex. There are honey notes, green notes, a slight tartness like raspberry, and underneath everything something darker. Something that speaks of the earth they grew in, the sun that fed them, the rain that watered their roots. He sets the handful down gently on the table and reaches back into the crate. There are dozens more bundles, each one wrapped in muslin cloth and tied with rough twine. He begins to lift them out one by one, arranging them on the table surface. The pile grows. The room fills with the ghost of summer gardens, and still the rain falls outside, completely irrelevant now, utterly forgotten. The second crate is easier to open. The lid comes free with just a few sharp tugs. Inside, packed in the same protective straw, are bundles of lavender. The contrast is immediate and beautiful. Where the roses were dark, the lavender is pale. The dried flower spikes are a soft gray purple, the color of twilight or distant mountains or a bruise that's healing. The stems are woody and tough, tied together in thick bundles with strips of cloth. The perfumer pulls out one bundle and holds it up to the lamplight. The tiny individual flowers are perfectly preserved, each one a miniature work of art. Lavender is different from rose. Where rose is opulent and romantic, lavender is clean and herbal. It speaks of hillsides and wind and clarity. The ancient Romans used to put it in their baths. The word itself comes from their language, from the verb meaning to wash. It is a purifying scent, a calming scent. And yet it has its own sweetness, its own subtle magic. He sets the lavender bundles next to the roses. Already, the two scents are beginning to blend in the air, creating something new. Something neither rose nor lavender alone, but a third thing, a harmony. This is what the perfumer understands that others do not. Scent is not singular. It is not one note played alone. It is a symphony. It is the careful combination of many elements, each one supporting and enhancing the others, creating complexity, creating depth, creating something that touches the very core of human memory and emotion. The third crate holds the treasure. The perfumer saves it for last, taking his time with the first two, building anticipation. When he finally turns his attention to it, his movements become more deliberate, more reverent. This crate is smaller than the others, but heavier, much heavier. He works the lid free carefully, making sure not to splinter the wood. And when he lifts it away and parts the protective straw, what he reveals makes him smile. Resin, raw frankincense from Arabia. The pieces are irregular in size and shape, anywhere from as small as a pea to as large as a child's fist. They look like drops of frozen honey, like amber, like petrified sunlight. The color ranges from pale yellow to deep orange-brown, and each piece is slightly translucent, catching the lamplight and glowing from within. He picks up one of the larger pieces and examines it closely. The surface is rough and irregular, where the resin oozed from the cut bark of the tree and then hardened in the desert air. There are small bits of bark still embedded in it, dark flecks of the original source. This is tree blood. This is the tears of the boswellia tree, weeping its precious gift in the harsh Arabian desert. For thousands of years, this resin has been more valuable than gold. Kings and priests have burned it in temples. It has been carried across continents on camel caravans. Wars have been fought over it. He brings it to his nose and inhales. Even unburned, even cold, the scent is there. Woody, balsamic, slightly citric. But he knows that when heated, when burned or distilled, it transforms. It becomes something transcendent, something that makes the soul rise like smoke. The ancients believed it carried prayers to heaven. The perfumer believes it carries memory across time. Now all 3 crates are open. The table is covered with summer despite the freezing rain. The roses lie in their crimson piles. The lavender bundles stand like sentinels. The frankincense glows in its scattered chunks, and the perfumer stands in the middle of it all, breathing deeply, his mind already working through formulas and combinations, imagining the scents he will create. But first, the work must begin. The transformation from raw material to essence, from plant matter to liquid perfume, it is a process that requires patience, skill, and the right tools. He moves to one of the shelves and takes down a mortar and pestle. Not just any mortar. This one is his favorite. It is made of white marble, veined with gray like winter clouds. The bowl is worn smooth from years of use, polished by countless ingredients, shaped by the grinding motion of the pestle. It is heavy, substantial. When he sets it on the table, it lands with a satisfying thunk that speaks of its density, its permanence. The pestle is equally beautiful. Also marble, also worn smooth. It fits perfectly in his hand. The weight is balanced. The surface is cool against his palm. He has used this tool so many times it feels like an extension of his own arm. He knows exactly how much pressure to apply, exactly what angle to use, exactly how the different materials will respond to the grinding motion. He begins with the roses. Reaching into one of the piles, he gathers a generous handful of dried petals. They crackle slightly in his grip, delicate as autumn leaves. He drops them into the marble bowl. They land in a soft cascade, piling up, a little mountain of crimson. For a moment, he simply looks at them, appreciates their color, their form, their potential. Then he begins to grind. The pestle comes down into the petals with steady pressure. Immediately there is resistance. The dried plant matter doesn't want to yield. It pushes back. But the perfumer is patient. He applies more pressure, begins to rotate the pestle in a circular motion, crushing the petals against the sides of the mortar. And slowly, they begin to break down. The sound is beautiful, a soft, rhythmic crunch, like footsteps on fresh snow, like biting into a perfect apple. The pestle rotates. The petals crack and split and crumble. With each rotation, they break down further. What were once recognizable flower petals become fragments, then flakes, then powder. And as they break down, they release their scent. It happens gradually at first, a little whisper of rose, then more and more. The grinding action is breaking open the cell walls of the dried petals, releasing the aromatic compounds trapped inside. The air above the mortar begins to shimmer with scent. It rises like invisible smoke. It spreads through the workshop. The rose smell intensifies with each turn of the pestle, growing stronger, more present, more alive. The perfumer breathes it in as he works. His eyes close for a moment, letting the scent fill his lungs, his mind, his memory. This is why he does this work, this moment of transformation, this moment when something dormant becomes active, when something preserved becomes present. The dried petals held their scent in potential. Now that potential is being realized. The rose is blooming again, not in a garden, but here, in this mortar, in this room, on this cold night. He continues grinding. The powder becomes finer. The color shifts slightly, becoming more uniform, less varied. The scent continues to build. It's almost overwhelming now, rich and heady and sweet. He can taste it on his tongue, feel it in the back of his throat. The entire workshop is drunk with it. Finally, when the petals have been reduced to a fine, uniform powder, he sets the pestle down. The mortar contains perhaps 2 handfuls of rose powder. It looks like dark red sand, or ground cinnamon, or dried blood. But it smells like everything beautiful about summer. He runs his finger through it, feeling the texture. Silky, smooth, perfect. He sets the mortar aside and reaches for another. This one is smaller, made of smooth, dark wood. It will be for the lavender. The process will be similar, but the result different. Lavender has a different structure than rose. The flowers are tiny and more tightly packed. They will require a different technique. He selects one of the lavender bundles and begins to strip the dried flowers from their stems. They come away easily, falling into his palm in a soft purple rain. When he has enough, he transfers them to the wooden mortar and begins to grind. The sound is different here, less of a crunch, more of a rustle. The lavender flowers are smaller, harder, more resistant. The wooden pestle works against them, breaking them down, but it takes more effort. The scent that emerges is clean and piercing. Where the rose was soft and romantic, the lavender is sharp and clarifying. It cuts through the heavier rose, sent like a beam of clear light through fog. The two scents begin to interact in the air of the workshop, creating layers, depth, complexity. This is what the perfumer loves, the way different scents talk to each other, the way they create conversations in the invisible world of smell. He grinds the lavender until it too becomes powder, though it retains more texture than the rose, tiny fragments of flower and stem that refuse to break down completely. That's fine. That's part of lavender's character, its stubborn, herbal nature. Now he has two mortars filled with powder, rose and lavender, the building blocks of what will come next. But there is one more ingredient that needs preparation, the frankincense. The resin requires a different approach. It cannot simply be ground like flower petals. In its raw form, it's too hard, too irregular. It needs to be broken down first. The perfumer takes a clean cloth and spreads it on the table. He places several large chunks of frankincense in the center, then wraps the cloth around them, creating a bundle. Then he picks up a wooden mallet. The first strike is gentle, more of a tap than a blow. The resin is valuable. He doesn't want to scatter it, but the tap is enough to crack one of the larger pieces. He can hear it split inside the cloth. He strikes again, and again, each blow carefully controlled, each one achieving exactly what he intends. Inside the cloth bundle, the frankincense is breaking into smaller pieces, chips, fragments, eventually small enough to work with. When he unwraps the cloth, the large chunks have become a collection of small pieces, ranging from grain-sized fragments to pebbles. Perfect. He selects a third mortar, this one made of black stone, heavy as a cannonball, and begins to add the frankincense pieces. But he doesn't grind them yet, not fully. The resin is too precious to reduce to powder here. It will be used differently. The workspace is ready now. 3 mortars sit on the table, rose powder in white marble, lavender powder in dark wood, frankincense fragments in black stone. Around them, the remaining bundles and crates, the lamps burning with their steady golden light. And in the center of it all, waiting patiently like a faithful servant, the alembic. This is the star of the workshop. This is the tool that makes true perfume possible. The alembic is an invention that came from the East, from the great Arab alchemists who understood that heat and vapor could separate the essential from the common, the spiritual from the material. The word itself comes from Arabic, alembic, the still, the transformer. This particular alembic is a thing of beauty. The main body is copper, hammered and shaped by a master craftsman. It is perhaps the size of a large melon, round and full, with a wide opening at the top and a long, curved spout emerging from the side like the neck of a swan. The copper has aged beautifully, developing a patina of greens and browns that speak to years of use and care. The surface is covered with tiny dents and imperfections, each one a memory of work performed, of transformations achieved. The curved spout leads to a coil of glass tubing. This is the serpentine, so called because it twists and curves like a snake. The glass is hand-blown, slightly irregular, containing tiny bubbles and imperfections that catch the light. The coil sits in a wooden trough that will be filled with cold water to cool the vapors as they pass through. And at the end of the serpentine, there is a small receiving flask, also glass, waiting to catch what drips from the end of the glass snake. The perfumer approaches the alembic with respect. This tool represents knowledge accumulated over centuries. It represents the transformation of alchemy into chemistry, of magic into science. And yet there is still something magical about it, something that goes beyond mere mechanics. When you distill the essence of a flower, you are not just extracting chemical compounds. You are capturing memory, emotion, the very soul of summer. He begins to prepare it for use. First, the trough. He takes a large clay pitcher and fills it from the rain barrel that sits by the door. The water is ice cold, fresh from tonight's downpour. He pours it into the wooden trough until the glass serpentine is completely submerged. The cold water will be crucial. It will cool the rising vapors, causing them to condense back into liquid as they pass through the coil. This is the heart of the distillation process, the transformation of steam back into essence. Next, he places a small brass oil lamp beneath the copper body of the alembic. The lamp is simple but effective, a shallow dish filled with oil, a wick floating in it. He adjusts the wick to the proper length. Too long and it will burn too hot, too fast. Too short and it won't provide enough heat. It must be just right. Distillation is patient work. It cannot be rushed. Now comes the filling. He takes the mortar containing the rose powder and carefully pours it into the open top of the alembic. The powder slides down the sides, settling at the bottom of the copper belly. Then he adds water, pure water from the well, drawn this morning when it was still dark. He pours it slowly, filling the alembic about 2/3 full. The water and rose powder mix, creating a murky pink-brown liquid. This is the material that will be transformed. Before he seals the top, he pauses. Should he add lavender as well? Create a blend from the beginning, or keep the rose pure for this first distillation? He considers for a long moment, weighing the options. Then he decides, pure rose first. The lavender will wait. Each essence must be captured individually before they can be properly combined. This is one of the cardinal rules of perfumery. Know your ingredients separately before you marry them together. He seals the top of the alembic with a cork that fits snugly into the opening, then reinforces the seal with a paste made of flour and water. This will harden and ensure that no vapors escape during the heating process. Everything that evaporates must pass through the serpentine. Nothing can be lost. The setup is complete. The alembic sits on the table like a copper beast, its glass snake coiled and ready, its receiving flask positioned perfectly to catch the drops. The perfumer takes a moment to check everything one last time. The water in the cooling trough, the seal at the top, the position of the lamp, everything is perfect. He lights the lamp. The wick catches immediately, flaring bright for a moment before settling into a steady golden flame. The light dances across the copper surface of the alembic, making it glow. Heat begins to rise. The oil in the lamp burns with a clean, almost invisible shimmer. Beneath the copper belly, the air starts to warm. Nothing happens at first. This is the nature of distillation. It is patient. It is slow. The heat must penetrate the copper. The copper must warm the water inside. The water must heat until it begins to steam. This takes time. Minutes that stretch out, each one feeling longer than the last. The perfumer sits on a wooden stool next to the table, watching, waiting. There is no point in doing anything else. This cannot be rushed. The rain continues its drumming rhythm outside. The lamps burn steady. The workshop smells of rose and lavender and the faint metallic tang of heated copper. And slowly, so slowly you might miss it if you weren't watching carefully, the water inside the alembic begins to warm. The first sign is subtle. A very slight movement in the liquid, visible through the opening at the top before it was sealed. A gentle stirring as the heat creates tiny currents. Then, after what feels like an eternity but is probably only 15 minutes, the first bubbles appear. Tiny pinpricks of vapor forming at the bottom of the copper belly, rising through the pink-brown liquid, breaking at the surface with the softest whisper. The perfumer leans closer. Yes, it's beginning. The bubbles come more frequently now. The gentle stirring becomes a slow roll. The liquid is heating, approaching the boiling point. Steam is forming. And with it, the aromatic compounds in the rose petals are being lifted, carried upward by the water vapor, transformed from solid to gas. He watches as the first wisps of steam begin to rise from the liquid surface, drifting toward the curved spout that leads to the serpentine. The steam is visible, barely, like breath on a cold morning. It carries the soul of the rose with it. All those aromatic molecules, those complex organic compounds that create the scent we call rose, are now suspended in water vapor, rising, seeking escape. But there is only one way out, through the spout, into the glass serpentine, through the coil submerged in cold water, and then transformed once again from steam back to liquid, dripping into the waiting flask. The first of the steam enters the glass coil. The perfumer watches its progress. He can see it moving through the clear glass, a ghostly presence, twisting and turning as it follows the curves of the serpentine. And then, as it encounters the cold water surrounding the glass tube, something beautiful happens. The steam begins to condense, to change state, to transform from vapor back to liquid. Tiny droplets form on the inside surface of the glass tube. They gather. They grow heavy. They begin to slide down the interior of the glass, following gravity, moving inexorably toward the exit, toward the receiving flask. And then, after what feels like hours, but is perhaps only 30 minutes since the lamp was lit, it happens. The first drop falls. One single drop of liquid falls from the end of the glass serpentine into the waiting flask below. It makes no sound as it lands. It is too small, too delicate. But the perfumer sees it, and his breath catches in his throat. This is the moment. This is what all the preparation was for. This first drop of essential oil, of rose essence, of summer distilled into liquid form. He leans close to the flask, watching with the intensity of a jeweler examining a rare diamond. The drop sits at the bottom of the glass, clear as water, innocent looking. But he knows what it is. Concentrated rose scent. Hundreds of petals reduced to this one drop, the very essence of the flower. A minute passes, then another drop falls, then another. The rhythm establishes itself. Drip, 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 each drop falling with patient regularity, each one adding to the slowly growing puddle at the bottom of the receiving flask. The perfumer settles onto his stool, watching. This will take hours. The entire contents of the alembic must be slowly boiled, the steam captured, the essence collected. It cannot be rushed. It must not be rushed. As he watches the hypnotic progression of drops, he thinks about the history of this process. The ancient Egyptians had known something of perfume making, using enfleurage and simple distillation. The Greeks and Romans had expanded the art, but it was the Arab alchemists who had perfected the alembic, who had understood how to truly capture the soul of a flower in liquid form. Avicenna, the great Persian physician, had been one of the first to describe the process in detail. He had distilled rose water and rose oil, understanding that the vapor carried the essence, and that cooling, the vapor returned it to liquid form. That knowledge had traveled west, brought back by crusaders and traders, by scholars and merchants. It had found its way to monasteries and then to workshops like this one. And now, in this small room on this rainy night, the perfumer continues that ancient tradition. The same process, the same transformation, the same magic dressed in science. Drops continue to fall. The liquid in the flask grows. After an hour, there is perhaps a tablespoon of clear liquid collected. It doesn't look like much, but the perfumer knows its value. When the distillation is complete, when all the water has been boiled and all the steam has been condensed, there will be perhaps half a cup of rose water, and floating on top of it, a thin layer of pure rose oil. That oil will be the treasure. A few drops of it worth more than a month's wages for a common laborer. He adjusts the flame of the lamp slightly, making sure it maintains its steady heat. Too hot and the distillation will go too fast, might even scorch the plant material at the bottom of the alembic. Too cool and the process will take all night and may not extract everything. The flame must be steady, reliable, like a heartbeat. The workshop has settled into a kind of meditation. The rain outside provides a constant backdrop of sound. The lamp flame flickers gently. The bubbling inside the alembic creates a soft, rhythmic burbling, and the drops continue their patient fall. Drip, 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 each one a tiny miracle. The perfumer allows his mind to wander as he watches. He thinks about the roses these petals came from. Somewhere in the south, in a garden he has never seen, these flowers grew. They opened to the sun. Bees visited them. Rain watered them. And at the perfect moment, at the peak of their bloom when their scent was strongest, someone had carefully picked them, laid them out to dry in the shade, preserved them, packed them, shipped them north so that he here now could transform them once again. Every perfume tells a story. This is something the perfumer understands deeply. The rose water he is creating carries within it the story of that distant garden, the story of the soil and sun and rain that fed the plants, the story of the hands that picked and packed, the story of the journey north. And soon, when this essence is mixed with others, when it becomes part of a larger perfume, it will carry those stories to whoever wears it. They may not know the stories consciously, but somewhere deep in their mind, in that ancient part of the brain where scent and memory are intertwined, they will feel it. Another hour passes. The liquid in the receiving flask has grown substantially. It is beginning to take on a very faint pink tinge, though it remains mostly clear. The scent rising from it is indescribable, pure rose, but not like any rose you've ever smelled in a garden. This is concentrated, intensified, the very idea of rose rendered in liquid form. The perfumer carefully checks the level of water in the cooling trough. Some has evaporated from the warmth of the lamp. He adds more, keeping the glass serpentine fully submerged in cold water. This is important. If the serpentine gets too warm, the condensation won't happen properly. The steam will pass through uncondensed, and the essence will be lost. He also checks the lamp oil. It's running low. He refills it carefully, not wanting to disturb the flame. The process must continue uninterrupted. A steady heat, a steady production of steam, a steady collection of drops. As the third hour approaches, the perfumer notices something. The liquid dripping from the serpentine is beginning to change. At first, it was clear like water. But now, occasionally, a drop falls that has a different quality, a slight oiliness, a different way of catching the light. This is the essential oil itself beginning to come through. The pure rose oil, separated from the rose water by the distillation process. Oil and water don't mix. This is one of the fundamental principles that makes this process work. The steam carries both water and oil vapor from the alembic. Both condense in the serpentine. But when they collect in the receiving flask, they separate. The water sinks to the bottom, being heavier. The oil floats on top, being lighter. And that oil, that precious top layer, is what the perfumer is really after. He watches as more oily drops fall. They float on the surface of the collected liquid like tiny golden coins. The lamplight catches them, making them glow. This is it. This is the treasure. Rose attar, rose otto, pure essential oil of rose. One of the most expensive substances on earth, more valuable by weight than silver. The distillation continues into the fourth hour. The perfumer has to refill the lamp oil twice more. He refreshes the water in the cooling trough. He watches the steady drip with a patience that comes from years of practice. There is a meditative quality to this work, a kind of trance state induced by the repetitive watching, the steady sounds, the overwhelming scent that fills the workshop. By the fifth hour, he can see that the distillation is nearly complete. The drops are falling more slowly now. The bubbling inside the alembic has changed quality, becoming more sporadic. Most of the water has been boiled away, most of the essence extracted. Soon it will be time to stop. He watches carefully, waiting for the right moment. When the drops slow to one every few minutes, when the bubbling inside becomes intermittent, he knows the process is done. He reaches out and extinguishes the lamp with a ceramic snuffer. The flame dies. The heat begins to dissipate. The transformation is complete. The alembic sits cooling on the table. Inside, at the bottom, there is a small amount of spent plant material, the rose petals that have given up their essence. They are worthless now, empty husks, but from them has come something precious beyond measure. The perfumer waits for the alembic to cool enough to handle, then carefully removes the receiving flask. It contains perhaps half a cup of liquid. Most of it is rose water, clear with a faint pink tinge. But floating on top is a thin layer of pure oil. It is golden yellow, clear as honey, and it shimmers in the lamplight like liquid summer. He holds the flask up to his nose and inhales deeply. The scent is overwhelming. Pure, concentrated, perfect. This is rose in its most essential form. This is what all those petals, all those flowers, all that sunlight and soil and water have been reduced to. A few precious drops of oil that smell more like rose than any rose in any garden ever could. But he doesn't stop to admire it too long. There is more work to be done. The lavender still waits, and he has ideas about how to combine these essences, how to create something new, something that has never existed before. He carefully pours the rose water and oil into a separating funnel, a glass device shaped like an inverted cone with a stopcock at the bottom. The water and oil settle, separating cleanly. He drains off the water into a clean bottle. This rose water is valuable in its own right, useful in cooking, in medicine, in cosmetics. But the real treasure is the oil that remains. He carefully collects the thin layer of rose oil into a tiny vial, no larger than his thumb. The amount is heartbreakingly small after 5 hours of work, perhaps half a teaspoon, maybe less. But this half teaspoon is worth a small fortune. And more than that, it is pure magic, pure summer, pure beauty in liquid form. He seals the vial with a wax-coated cork and sets it on a special shelf where his collection of essential oils lives. Even in its sealed vial, the scent emanates slightly, adding its voice to the symphony of smells that fills the workshop. Now for the lavender. He cleans the alembic carefully, rinsing it with clean water, making sure no rose residue remains. The lavender essence must be pure, uncontaminated. Each scent must be captured in its truest form before they can be properly blended. He refills the cooling trough with fresh, cold water, prepares the lamp with fresh oil, takes the mortar containing the ground lavender and pours it into the cleaned alembic, adds fresh water, seals the top with a new cork and new paste. The setup is familiar now, but no less sacred for its repetition. He lights the lamp once more, the flame catches, the heat begins to build, and the perfumer settles back onto his stool to watch and wait. The night is still young, the rain still falls, and there is still so much work to do. As the water in the alembic begins to warm, he thinks about what he will create. The rose oil is the heart of the perfume. Rich, romantic, opulent, the lavender will provide balance, clarity, a clean herbal note to lift the heavy sweetness of the rose, and the frankincense, when he distills it tomorrow, will provide the base, the depth, the soul that anchors everything else. But there is an art to the blending. Too much rose and the perfume will be cloying, overwhelming. Too much lavender and it will be too sharp, too medicinal. The frankincense must be present but subtle, a foundation rather than a dominant voice. Finding the perfect balance will take experimentation, trial and error, days or even weeks of testing different ratios, different combinations. This is what separates a true perfumer from someone who simply mixes scents, understanding how the different notes interact, how they evolve over time, how they smell different on different people, reacting with individual body chemistry to create unique variations. A good perfume is alive. It changes. It tells a story that unfolds over hours as the top notes fade and the heart notes emerge, and finally the base notes linger on the skin long after the wearer has forgotten they put it on. The lavender distillation has begun to bubble now. The process is the same but different. The scent rising from the alembic is cleaner, brighter than the rose. It cuts through the remaining rose smell in the workshop, creating new combinations in the air. The two scents dance together, and the perfumer smiles. Yes, this will work. This blend will be beautiful. The first drop of lavender essence falls into the receiving flask, then another. The patient rhythm establishes itself once more. Drip, 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 hours of work ahead, hours of watching and waiting and tending the flame. But the perfumer doesn't mind. This is his life's work. This is what he was born to do. Outside, the freezing rain continues. The city sleeps. The night grows deeper. But here, in this small workshop lit by golden lamps, filled with impossible summer, the perfumer works on, transforming, creating, capturing the very essence of beauty in bottles and vials, turning flowers into magic, turning plants into memories, turning scent into art. The receiving flask slowly fills with lavender essence, clear as water but smelling of hillsides and wind and peace. The perfumer watches each drop fall with the same attention he gave the first. His back aches from sitting. His eyes are tired from the lamplight. But there is joy in this work, deep satisfaction. He is doing what humans have done for thousands of years, taking the gifts of the natural world and transforming them into something more, something that touches the soul. As the night deepens toward morning, as the third hour of the lavender distillation approaches, the perfumer allows himself a moment of contentment. Tomorrow he will distill the frankincense. The next day he will begin the delicate work of blending, testing, refining, creating the perfect balance. And eventually, when the formula is right, he will have created a perfume that has never existed before, a scent that is uniquely his. A liquid memory of summer that will bring joy and beauty to whoever wears it. But for now, there is just this: the steady drip of essence, the warmth of the workshop, the scent of flowers transformed, the ancient art continuing in this small room on this rainy night. The perfumer closes his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, letting the scents fill him completely. And then he opens them again and returns his attention to the falling drops, to the patient work, to the magic of transformation that never gets old no matter how many times you witness it. This is the medieval perfumer's workshop. This is where summer is bottled. This is where scent becomes memory and memory becomes art. And as the rain continues its endless percussion on the windows, as the lamps burn their steady gold, as the essences slowly collect drop by precious drop, the work continues. The ancient art, the sacred transformation, the capturing of beauty in its most essential form. The lavender distillation is complete. The perfumer extinguishes the lamp and waits for the alembic to cool, his hands resting on the worn surface of the table. The vial of lavender essence sits beside the rose, two small containers of concentrated summer. But the night's work is not finished. There are other creations waiting, other forms that scent can take. Not everything must be liquid. Not everything must be distilled. He rises from his stool, his joints protesting slightly after hours of sitting. The rain has lessened now, no longer the angry drumming it was earlier, but a softer patter against the windows. The storm is passing. Morning is still hours away, but the worst of the weather has moved on, leaving only this gentle persistence behind. The perfumer moves to a different section of his workshop, to a shelf that holds materials of a different kind. Here there are blocks of beeswax, golden and smooth, wrapped in linen cloth. Clay jars sealed with cork and wax, their contents mysterious and precious. Wooden boxes whose lids are held shut with small bronze latches. He knows what each one contains. Every item in this workshop is catalogued in his mind, a mental inventory built over years of practice. He takes down one of the clay jars, feeling its weight in his hands. This one is special. This one contains ambergris, perhaps the strangest and most valuable ingredient in the perfumer's collection. The substance inside this jar began its life in the belly of a whale, swimming in dark ocean, depths thousands of miles from here. It is a secretion, produced in the digestive tract of sperm whales, expelled into the sea where it floats for years, decades even, transforming under the influence of salt water and sun and time. When it washes up on beaches, it looks like grey stone, rough, irregular, unremarkable, but its scent is anything but ordinary. Raw ambergris smells fecal marine, almost repulsive. But aged ambergris that has spent years being refined by the elements, develops a scent that is indescribable, sweet, earthy, musky, with notes of tobacco and wood and something that can only be called oceanic. It is a scent that seems to come from another world. And more than its own scent, ambergris has a magical property. It is a fixative. When added to a perfume, it makes the other scents last longer, much longer. It anchors the volatile compounds, prevents them from evaporating too quickly. A perfume without fixative might last a few hours on the skin. A perfume with ambergris can last for days. The ancient perfumers discovered this property and prized ambergris above almost everything else. Wars were fought over it. Fortunes made and lost, all for this strange grey substance that begins its life inside a whale. The perfumer breaks the wax seal on the jar and opens it carefully. Inside are small chunks of aged ambergris, grey-brown and slightly waxy in texture. He brings the jar to his nose and inhales. Yes, that deep, complex, almost magical scent. It is perfect. He sets the jar aside and reaches for another. This one contains musk, another animal-derived ingredient. True musk comes from the gland of the male musk deer, a small creature that lives in the mountains of Asia. The gland produces a powerful scent that the deer uses to mark its territory and attract mates. Harvested and dried, this musk becomes one of the most potent ingredients in perfumery. Like ambergris, it serves as both a scent in its own right and as a fixative. And like ambergris, it is worth its weight in gold. The musk in the jar is dark brown, almost black, with a texture somewhere between powder and paste. The scent is overwhelming when fresh, animalic, intense, almost frightening in its power. But used carefully in tiny amounts, it adds warmth and depth to a perfume. It creates a bass note that feels alive, that seems to pulse with the rhythm of breath and heartbeat. These ingredients, ambergris and musk, are the foundation of what the perfumer will create next. Not a liquid perfume that is dabbed on the skin, not a distilled essence that evaporates into the air, but a solid perfume, a pomander, something that can be carried, held, breathed in whenever protection is needed. The pomander is more than just perfume. It is a talisman, a shield. In these medieval times, when plague can sweep through a city like wildfire, when the very air itself seems to carry death, people believe that scent is protection. The theory of miasma holds that disease travels in bad air, in foul-smelling vapors that rise from rotting matter, from sewage, from the sick and dying. If bad air carries disease, then good air must prevent it. Sweet-smelling air, fragrant air. Air perfumed with precious substances. So people carry pomanders, small metal balls, elaborately decorated, filled with perfumed material, pierced with holes so the scent can escape. They wear them on chains around their necks, hold them to their noses when walking past anything foul, breathe deeply of their scent as protection against the invisible threat of plague. Whether it actually works, the perfumer does not know. He is not a physician. He does not claim to understand how disease spreads or what prevents it, but he knows that his pomanders bring comfort, that people feel safer when they carry them. And perhaps that feeling of safety, that reduction in fear, is itself a kind of medicine. The mind and body are connected in ways no one fully understands. If holding a sweet-smelling ball makes someone feel protected, perhaps that protection becomes real in some way. Regardless of the mechanism, the demand for pomanders is constant, especially now in autumn as people prepare for winter when sickness always seems to increase. The perfumer makes them regularly, each one slightly different, each one tailored to the preferences and budget of the customer who ordered it. Tonight, he will make one for himself, or rather, he will make one to have on hand to sell when the right customer comes along. A masterwork pomander using the finest ingredients, something worthy of a nobleman or wealthy merchant, something that will command a price high enough to buy food for a month. He gathers his materials on the table. A block of pure beeswax, the color of sunshine, the jar of ambergris, the jar of musk, and a third jar, this one containing a pinch of powder so precious he uses it only on rare occasions. Saffron, the dried stigmas of crocus flowers, harvested by hand, requiring thousands upon thousands of flowers to produce even a small amount. It is the most expensive spice in the world, more valuable than gold by weight. And it adds a warm, slightly metallic, deeply exotic note to any perfume. He also retrieves a small metal pomander bowl from a drawer. This one is empty, waiting to be filled. It is made of brass, intricately worked with delicate filigree patterns. When separated along its equator, it opens into two halves. Inside, the halves are smooth, ready to hold the perfumed wax. The outside is pierced with dozens of tiny holes in decorative patterns, flowers and vines, and geometric designs, all meant to allow the scent to escape while looking beautiful. The first step is to melt the beeswax. The perfumer places a small iron pot on a stand over an oil lamp, the same type of lamp he used for distillation, but with a gentler flame. He breaks off a chunk of beeswax and places it in the pot. As the wax begins to warm, it loses its solid form, becoming first soft and pliable, then liquid, golden and clear as honey. While the wax melts, he prepares his other ingredients. Using a small knife, he shaves a few fragments from the ambergris, creating tiny curls that fall onto a clean piece of parchment. The amount must be precise. Too much and the pomander will smell too marine, too strange. Too little and it won't provide the fixative properties he needs. He aims for perhaps the weight of 3 grains of wheat. Tiny, nearly nothing, but enough. Next, the musk. This requires even more care. Musk is powerful, overwhelming. A little goes an extremely long way. He uses a thin metal spatula to extract the smallest possible amount from the jar, a smear, a whisper. He places it on the parchment next to the ambergris. Already he can smell it, even from this small quantity. Warm, animalic, alive. Finally, the saffron. He opens the jar carefully, treating it with the reverence it deserves. Inside are the delicate red threads, dried but still somehow vibrant. He selects 3 stigmas. Just 3. That is enough. He crushes them between his fingers, reducing them to a fine powder that glows red-orange in the lamplight. The beeswax is fully melted now, a clear golden liquid that shimmers in its pot. The perfumer removes the pot from the heat and sets it on a stone tile to prevent it from cooling too quickly. Now comes the delicate part, the incorporation of the scent ingredients. He adds the ambergris fragments first. They float on the surface of the melted wax for a moment before beginning to dissolve. He stirs gently with a thin wooden stick, watching as the fragments break down, disappear into the wax, becoming one with it. The scent begins to emerge immediately. That oceanic, earthy, mysterious ambergris smell rising with the heat. Next, the musk. He scrapes it from the parchment into the wax, the tiniest addition, and stirs again. The transformation is immediate. The scent becomes warmer, fuller, more complex. The animalic note of the musk plays against the marine note of the ambergris, creating tension, creating interest. Finally, the saffron powder. As it touches the wax, the powder blooms, spreading its color through the golden liquid like ink in water. The perfumer stirs slowly, watching the color distribute itself, turning the wax a slightly deeper gold, more amber now than yellow. The scent becomes almost intoxicating. Rich, warm, exotic. This is a perfume fit for royalty. But he's not finished. He reaches for the tiny vials of essential oils he distilled earlier. The rose, the lavender. These will provide the top notes, the first impression when someone brings the pomander to their nose. He adds a single drop of rose oil. One drop. That's all the concentrated essence requires. He stirs. The floral note blooms through the wax, then a drop of lavender. The herbal clarity cuts through the heavier base notes, providing balance. The perfumed wax is complete. Now it must be shaped before it cools too much. The perfumer works quickly but carefully. He pours about half of the wax into one hemisphere of the brass pomander ball, filling it just to the brim. Then he sets the pot aside and picks up the filled hemisphere, cradling it gently in his palm. The wax is still quite hot, but the perfumer's hands are accustomed to working with warm materials. He can tolerate heat that would burn someone else. He holds the hemisphere steady, watching as the wax begins to cool, its surface forming a slight skin. When it has cooled just enough to hold its shape, but is still pliable, he takes a small amount of the remaining wax and begins to roll it between his palms. The warmth of his hands keeps the wax soft. He rolls it in a circular motion, shaping it into a sphere about the size of a hazelnut. The motion is hypnotic. Roll, press, shape, roll, press, shape. Gradually, the wax forms into a perfect sphere, smooth, even, warm in his hand. This small sphere will sit in the center of the pomander, suspended between the two hemispheres when they're closed together. It provides additional scent and helps the two halves grip each other when sealed. The perfumer sets the sphere carefully into the wax-filled hemisphere, pressing it down slightly so it adheres. Perfect. He pours the remaining wax into the second hemisphere, filling it to match the first. Then, working quickly before either half cools completely, he brings them together, aligning the equator carefully. The two halves join with a soft click, the filigree patterns matching up perfectly. He holds the assembled ball in both hands, feeling it warm against his palms, feeling the two halves bond together as the wax cools. After a few minutes, he sets the completed pomander on the table and gently tries to separate the halves. They resist. Good. The wax has sealed them together, but not permanently. When needed, the halves can be separated to refresh the wax or add more scent ingredients. For now, though, they are one object. One beautiful, fragrant, protective talisman. The perfumer brings the pomander to his nose, holding it just beneath his nostrils, and inhales slowly through the pierced holes. The scent is glorious, complex, layered. The first impression is the lavender and rose, bright and clear. Then comes the warmth of the ambergris and musk, deep and sustaining. Underneath everything is the exotic whisper of saffron, like golden light translated into smell, and all of it bound together by the sweet, honey-like scent of the beeswax itself. This pomander would protect its owner from any miasma, or at least they would believe it could, and in believing, perhaps find courage to walk through streets that might otherwise terrify them. The perfumer sets it on a special shelf, a place of honor, where it joins several other completed pomanders waiting for customers. Even from across the room, he can smell it slightly, its scent escaping through those carefully designed holes, joining the symphony of smells that fills the workshop. But the night's work continues. The pomander is finished, but there are other creations to pursue, other forms for fragrance to take. The perfumer's mind is still active, still creative, despite the late hour. The work energizes him even as it tires his body. This is the paradox of doing what you love, the exhaustion that feels like satisfaction. He turns his attention to a different project now, an infusion. This is a slower process than distillation, measured not in hours but in weeks. Yet it must be started tonight, while his mind is in this creative space, while the workshop is alive with the energy of transformation. An infusion is simple in concept. You take a neutral oil and add aromatic materials to it. Over time, the oil absorbs the scent compounds from the materials. The longer they sit together, the more complete the transfer of scent. Some perfumers infuse oils for months, believing that patience yields the best results. The perfumer has oils that have been infusing for years, adding new materials periodically, creating scents of incredible complexity and depth. Tonight, he will start a new infusion, something special. He has been thinking about this combination for weeks, waiting for the right materials to arrive. Now he has everything he needs. He takes a glass jar from the shelf. This one is larger than the vials used for essential oils, perhaps the size of a small apple. It is made of clear glass, thick enough to be durable, smooth enough to be beautiful. The glass is slightly imperfect, as all hand-blown glass is, with tiny bubbles suspended in its structure like frozen rain. The base for this infusion will be almond oil. Sweet almond oil, pressed from the nuts, refined until it is nearly odorless, pale gold and clear as water. Almond oil is perfect for perfume infusions because it has almost no scent of its own. It is a blank canvas. It will carry whatever scents are added to it without interference, and it is kind to skin, absorbed easily, leaving only softness and the desired fragrance behind. The perfumer has a larger bottle of almond oil stored in a cool cupboard. He retrieves it and pours carefully into the glass jar, filling it about two-thirds full. The oil moves slowly, viscously, catching the lamplight as it fills the jar. It looks like liquid gold, like sunshine itself made into oil. Now for the aromatics. The perfumer has chosen two for this infusion, vanilla and cinnamon, both exotic, both rare, both capable of creating warmth and sweetness that feels almost edible. The vanilla comes in long, dark pods, wrinkled and slightly oily to the touch. These pods are the fruit of an orchid that grows in the tropical regions of the New World, on the other side of the vast ocean. They arrive in Europe rarely and at great cost, carried on ships that take months to make the journey. Each pod is worth a small fortune, but the scent they provide is worth every coin. The perfumer takes one pod and places it on his cutting board. Using a sharp knife, he slices it lengthwise, opening it like a book. Inside, the pod is filled with thousands of tiny black seeds, sticky and fragrant. The scent that escapes is intoxicating, sweet, creamy, rich. It smells like comfort, like luxury, like something forbidden and delicious. He cuts the opened pod into smaller pieces, perhaps 4 or 5 sections. Each piece curls slightly, the sticky seeds clinging to the interior walls. He drops these pieces into the jar of almond oil. They float for a moment before slowly sinking, their weight pulling them down through the golden liquid. Already, even just from this brief contact, the oil is beginning to take on a faint vanilla scent. Next, the cinnamon. Not powdered cinnamon, but whole sticks. These are actually bark, stripped from cinnamon trees that grow in the Far East. The bark is rolled into tight spirals and dried, creating the cinnamon sticks familiar to spice merchants and cooks. But the perfumer is not interested in using cinnamon for cooking. He wants its scent. That warm, slightly spicy, sweet sharp smell that seems to carry the sun and soil of distant lands. He selects 3 cinnamon sticks, each one about the length of his finger. They are dark reddish brown, rough on the outside where the outer bark was, smooth on the inside where they curled. He snaps one in half, hearing the crisp crack, releasing a burst of cinnamon scent into the air. The fragrance is immediate and powerful. He breaks all 3 sticks into halves, then adds them to the jar with the vanilla. The cinnamon sticks float on the surface of the oil, their lighter density keeping them buoyant. 6 half sticks bobbing gently, like little boats on a golden sea. Below them, the vanilla pieces rest on the bottom of the jar, dark and mysterious. The 2 aromatics will share this space for weeks, slowly releasing their scent compounds into the oil, transforming it from neutral carrier into complex perfume. The perfumer seals the jar with a cork, pressing it firmly into the opening. But this is not enough. Cork can dry out, can shrink, can allow air to enter and oil to evaporate. For a long-term infusion, a better seal is needed. He takes a stick of sealing wax, deep red in color, and holds it over the flame of a nearby lamp. The wax begins to melt, forming drops. He drips the molten wax around the edge where the cork meets the jar, creating a seal. The wax flows and spreads, covering the gap, and then hardens quickly, trapping the cork in place, making the jar airtight. He holds up the sealed jar to the lamplight, examining his work. The oil is clear and golden. The vanilla pieces are dark shapes at the bottom. The cinnamon sticks float on top. It looks like a specimen jar in a naturalist's collection, like captured magic waiting to be released. Over the coming weeks, this jar will sit on a shelf, and slowly, invisibly, the transformation will occur. The oil will darken slightly, taking on a pale amber color. The scent of vanilla and cinnamon will permeate every molecule. And when the infusion is complete, when the oil has absorbed everything the aromatics have to give, the perfumer will strain out the solid materials and bottle the scented oil. It will be a perfume oil of extraordinary beauty, sweet but not cloying, warm but not heavy, exotic but somehow also familiar, like a memory of comfort from a childhood that never was. He sets the jar on a high shelf where it will not be disturbed, where light will not reach it directly, where it can rest and transform in peace. The creation has taken only minutes, but the process will take weeks. This is the nature of some kinds of perfume work. Quick to begin, slow to complete. A lesson in patience. A meditation on the fact that some good things cannot be rushed. The workshop is a mess now. The table is crowded with equipment. The alembic, still warm from the lavender distillation. The mortars with their residue of crushed plant material. The pomander making supplies. Bits of wax, tools, jars, bottles. The creative chaos of a productive night. But the perfumer is not quite ready to clean. There is one more task he wants to complete while the creative energy still flows. The bottles. He has a collection of them, purchased from a Venetian glass merchant who visits the city twice a year. Venetian glass is the finest in the world. The artisans of that island city have perfected the art of glass-making, creating objects of such delicate beauty they seem more like captured light than solid matter. The perfumer treasures these bottles. He uses them only for his finest creations, the perfumes meant for the wealthiest customers. He goes to a locked cabinet and opens it with a small bronze key that hangs on a chain around his neck. Inside, wrapped carefully in soft linen, are his collection of Venetian bottles. He removes them one by one, unwrapping each with the care you might use with a newborn child. There are perhaps a dozen in total, each one different, each one a work of art. One is made of clear glass so pure it is almost invisible. You can see right through it as if looking through air itself. The shape is elegant, a cylinder that tapers slightly at the neck, topped with a glass stopper shaped like a teardrop. Another is made of deep blue glass, the color of the ocean at midnight. It is round and squat, with a wide base and narrow neck. The stopper is gold, real gold, fitted with a gasket to create a perfect seal. A third bottle is the most elaborate, made of clear glass, but decorated with threads of gold that spiral around the body like ivy climbing a tree. The gold was actually mixed into the glass while molten, creating this permanent decoration. The perfumer sets all the bottles on the table in a careful arrangement. Even empty, they are beautiful. Even without perfume, they are valuable. But filled with his finest creations, sealed and ready for sale, they become something more. They become promises, promises of beauty, of transformation, of the power to change how you are perceived in the world. He takes a clean linen cloth and begins to polish the bottles, not because they are dirty. They were wrapped and stored carefully, but polishing is a ritual, a way of honoring these objects, a meditation on the craft. The cloth moves over the glass in slow circles, buffing away any dust, any fingerprints, making the surface perfect. The sound is very gentle, the soft shush of cloth on glass. Occasionally, when he sets one bottle down to pick up another, there is a delicate clink as glass touches glass. These are soothing sounds, quiet sounds. The kind of sounds that happen late at night when the world is still and you are absorbed in careful work. As he polishes each bottle, he decides which perfume it will hold. The clear one, the nearly invisible one, that should hold the rose water. Pure rose water, simple and elegant, needs a bottle that won't compete with it visually. The transparency will let the faint pink color of the rose water show through. The blue bottle will be perfect for a blend. He has a formula in mind, combining the rose and lavender essences with a touch of the frankincense oil he will distill tomorrow. The blue glass will protect the perfume from light, which can degrade delicate scent compounds over time. The bottle with the gold threads deserves something special, perhaps a custom blend for a specific patron. He has a commission from a nobleman who wants a perfume for his new bride. Something romantic, but not too heavy. Something that speaks of gardens and summer and youth. The perfumer is already formulating it in his mind. Rose for romance, lavender for clarity, a touch of lemon oil for brightness, and just a whisper of musk for depth and longevity. Yes, that would be perfect. And presented in this golden threaded bottle, it would be a gift worthy of a bride. When all the bottles are polished to perfection, gleaming in the lamplight like captured stars, he begins to fill them. He starts with the rose water, the simplest of his creations. Using a small glass funnel, he carefully pours the rose water from its storage vessel into the clear bottle. The liquid flows smoothly, filling the bottle with its pale pink clarity. When it is nearly full, he stops, removes the funnel, and fits the glass stopper into place. The fit is perfect, as all Venetian glass is perfectly crafted. He holds the bottle up to the light. Beautiful, simple, perfect. Next, he creates the rose-lavender frankincense blend. For this, he needs to mix the essential oils in the right proportions. He takes a small glass beaker and begins to measure. 3 parts rose, 2 parts lavender, 1 part frankincense oil from his existing stock. The oils combine, creating a mixture that is slightly golden brown in color. The scent is incredible. The bright floral notes of rose and lavender supported by the deep, resinous base of frankincense. It is a perfume that tells a story, opening with flowers, developing into herbs, settling into warm incense. A perfume that changes over hours, revealing new facets as it develops on the skin. He dilutes this blend with more almond oil. Essential oils are too concentrated to wear directly. They must be cut with a carrier oil to the right strength. Too strong and they will overwhelm. Too weak and they will disappear too quickly. The perfumer knows the right ratio from years of experience. He adds the almond oil carefully, testing the blend on a small piece of parchment, letting it develop, smelling it at intervals. When the balance is right, he pours it into the blue bottle. The oil has a slight amber tint from the frankincense, and through the blue glass, it looks almost mysterious, like liquid twilight. He continues this process, filling bottles with different creations. Some simple, single-note perfumes, rose water, lavender water, others more complex. Blends of 3 or 4 or 5 ingredients, each one balanced to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Each bottle receives its perfume. Each stopper is fitted carefully. Each filled bottle is set aside on a special tray, ready for the final step. The final step is labeling. The perfumer has small parchment labels cut to size, and he writes on them with a quill pen and iron gall ink. His handwriting is precise, practiced. He labels each bottle with its contents. Aqua rossi for the rose water. Oleum lavanduli for lavender oil. For the blends, he creates names. Amoris eternus for the romantic blend meant for the bride. Eternal love. The nobleman will appreciate the poetry of it. Somnium noctis, for a blend heavy in lavender, meant to promote sleep and calm. Night dream. Each label is attached to its bottle with a small dab of gum arabic, a natural adhesive made from acacia tree sap. The labels stick firmly, marking each bottle clearly. Now the bottles are complete, filled, sealed, labeled, ready to be sold, to be given as gifts, to be used. ready to carry their scent out into the world, to transform the people who wear them, to create moments of beauty in lives that may otherwise hold little beauty. The perfumer arranges the filled bottles back in the cabinet, wrapping each one carefully in linen, storing them safely. They represent weeks of work, rare ingredients, skill and knowledge. Each bottle is worth enough to feed a family for days. Together, they represent a small fortune. He locks the cabinet and returns the key to its place around his neck. Now, finally, he can turn his attention to cleaning. The storm outside has completely passed. The rain has stopped. Through the windows, he can see the first hints of pre-dawn light, a faint graying of the absolute darkness. He has worked through most of the night. His body is tired, but his mind is satisfied. The kind of deep satisfaction that comes from creative work well done. He begins to clean methodically. The alembic is emptied of its spent lavender flowers and rinsed with clean water. The copper is wiped down, the glass serpentine carefully cleaned. He returns it to its place on the shelf. The mortars are cleaned, the marble one scrubbed to remove all traces of rose powder, the wooden one cleaned of lavender residue. The black stone mortar with its frankincense fragments is also cleaned and put away. The table is wiped down with a damp cloth. All the spills and drips and stains from tonight's work are cleaned away. The surface becomes smooth again, ready for tomorrow's projects. The tools are returned to their proper places, knives to their hooks, measuring beakers to their shelf. The pomander-making supplies back to their drawer. Order emerges from chaos. The workshop transforms from a place of active creation back to a place of organized potential. As he works, the early morning light grows stronger, not bright yet but present. The darkness is definitely retreating. Another night ending, another day beginning. The perfumer moves to the windows and opens the shutters. Cool air floods in, fresh and clean after the rain. The city outside is starting to wake. Somewhere in the distance, he can hear a rooster crowing. The bell of a church tower marks the hour. Life continues. The world turns. The workshop is clean now, orderly, but still fragrant. The smells of the night's work linger in the air. Rose and lavender most strongly, but also hints of vanilla and cinnamon from the infusion jar. The waxy, musky scent of the pomander. The clean smell of fresh almond oil. All of these scents mix and mingle, creating a complex atmosphere that is uniquely this place, this workshop, this perfumer's domain. He is tired now, truly tired. The energy that sustained him through the long night of work is fading. His back aches from bending over the table. His eyes burn from the lamplight. His hands smell of a dozen different scents, absorbed into his skin from handling all the materials. He needs to rest, but not quite yet. There is one more thing, one final ritual to complete the night. In the corner of the workshop, there is a chair. Not a simple stool or bench, but a real chair. It is upholstered in deep red velvet, worn smooth and soft from years of use. The wood is dark walnut, carved with simple but elegant designs. This chair was here when the perfumer inherited this workshop from his master, and it will probably still be here long after he is gone. It is part of the space itself, a place of rest, of meditation, of transition between work and sleep. The perfumer moves to this chair and sits down slowly, feeling his tired body sink into the velvet. The chair embraces him, holds him, supports him. He leans back, closes his eyes, and simply breathes. The air of the workshop flows into his lungs, all those scents he has created tonight, all that concentrated beauty. He breathes it in and feels it calm him. The lavender is particularly strong. This is intentional. Lavender is known for its calming properties. It slows the heart, eases the mind, promotes rest. The ancient physicians prescribed lavender pillows for insomnia, lavender baths for anxiety, lavender water for headaches. And here, in this workshop saturated with lavender scent, the perfumer can feel it working. His racing thoughts begin to slow. The creative energy that kept him working all night begins to settle into peaceful exhaustion. The room is warm, not hot, but comfortably warm. The lamps have heated the air over the course of the night. The heat from the distillation process has contributed, and now, with the shutters open and the cool morning air mixing with the warm workshop air, the temperature is perfect. Not cold enough to be uncomfortable, not warm enough to be stuffy, just right, like being wrapped in a blanket that breathes. The perfumer's breathing slows, deepens. His body relaxes further into the velvet chair. His mind begins to drift, not quite asleep, but not fully awake either. That liminal space between consciousness and dreams. Images float through his awareness, the roses being crushed in the mortar, the steam rising from the alembic, the golden wax being rolled between his palms, the bottles gleaming like jewels. All the work of the night replaying in fragments, in sensory memories rather than coherent narrative. The scent of lavender seems to intensify, or perhaps his awareness of it increases as his other senses dim. It fills the room like an invisible presence, soothing, protecting, creating a barrier between him and the outside world. Inside this workshop, inside this envelope of calming scent, nothing bad can reach him. The miasma of the city, with all its disease and dirt and danger, cannot penetrate this space. Here the air is pure, fragrant, healing. His breathing becomes even slower, the rhythm of a body settling into rest. His heartbeat slows to match. The perfumer is not thinking anymore, not planning tomorrow's work, not reviewing tonight's successes. He is simply being, existing in this moment, in this chair, in this room, surrounded by the fruits of his labor and the tools of his craft. The light outside continues to grow. The pre-dawn gray is shifting toward the pale blue of early morning. Soon the sun will rise, spreading gold across the rooftops of the city. Shop owners will open their shutters. Merchants will set up their stalls. The streets will fill with people going about their daily business. The city will wake fully and begin its day. But in this workshop, time seems to have stopped. Or rather, time has become irrelevant. The perfumer sits in his velvet chair, breathing the lavender-scented air, existing in a pocket of peace that feels separate from the flow of hours and minutes. This moment could last forever, or it could end in the next breath. It doesn't matter. Right now, there is only rest, only calm, only the gentle fade from waking into sleep. The last lamp flickers and goes out, its oil finally exhausted. The workshop dims slightly, but there is enough morning light now coming through the windows that the darkness doesn't return. Instead, a soft grey-blue illumination fills the space. Gentle, peaceful, like being underwater in a calm sea. The perfumer's eyes are fully closed now. His face has relaxed, the lines of concentration smoothing away. His hands rest on the arms of the chair, palms up, fingers slightly curled. His breathing is so slow and quiet it is barely perceptible, the rise and fall of his chest like a gentle tide. The room breathes with him. The scents seem to pulse in rhythm with his breath. Lavender on the inhale, rose on the exhale. The workshop has become an extension of the perfumer's own body, or perhaps he has become an extension of the workshop. The boundary between them has dissolved in the scented air. This is the ultimate sleep trigger. Not just the lavender, though that is powerful. Not just the warmth and comfort of the chair, though that contributes. It is the totality of it all. The satisfaction of work well done. The physical exhaustion from hours of careful labor. The beauty surrounding him on every shelf, in every bottle, in the very air itself. The knowledge that he has created something of value. That he has transformed raw materials into art. That he has captured summer in the middle of a rainy autumn night. All of this combines to create a state of such profound peace that sleep becomes inevitable. Not a falling into sleep, but a gentle dissolving into it, like sugar into warm water, like frost melting in morning sun, like the boundary between here and there becoming so thin it ceases to exist at all. And as the copper part cools and the scent of lavender settles over the room like a blanket, the bad air of the world is kept at bay. You are clean, you are safe, and you are resting. Sleep well.